Tony Petitti, Greg Sankey, fighting it out, duking it out. They apparently can't decide what they want to do here with the college football playoffs. So there was a committee meeting about the playoffs today. No resolution was given, and it sounds like, according to reporting from Ross Dellinger, like things did not go well at all. Sounds like, if anything, the two sides in the Big Ten and the SEC are further apart than they've ever been. Now, if you watched one of my last videos I did where I talked about how the SEC and the Big Ten could come together and almost create their own kind of pseudo league and break away from the NCAA, I still do think that is something that they want to do, but it looks like it's very difficult to do when you have two groups here that are completely going against each other in the Big Ten and the SEC, because the Big Ten wants to be able to add more football teams. And so they want to go to a 24-team playoff. And if they add more football teams, that's going to put them in better position to break off with the SEC later on. But the SEC doesn't want to make that jump yet. They say we're still only at 16 teams. We want to do a 16-team playoff here. We want to keep our at-large bids and everything else out there. And so these two groups here are fighting like nothing else. And the Big Ten is trying to find a middle ground here, trying to say, okay, we'll go to 16 teams if you put it on paper that you agree we'll go to 24 teams in 2 or 3 years, right? But the SEC doesn't want to make that kind of commitment. And then on top of all this, you got the group of 6 that they just want more representation. You got the ACC and the Big 12 that they're just going to side with whatever the SEC does, because they just have apparently decided that they have no actual thought process and they're just going to agree with whatever Greg Sankey does. The leadership at those two conferences is completely in question at this point. For them to agree to at-large bids when it's obvious that there is no respect for their conferences out there. I mean, the ACC almost didn't get a team in the playoff this year, and they're going to say, well, we'll just do at-large bids. It's ridiculous. But all that to say, looks like the playoffs are going to stay at 12 teams next year from a lot of reporting that's out there. We'll see if that's the case. They have 5 more days, so the 23rd, to be able to decide if they do want to jump to 16 teams, 24 teams, whatever they want to do. Zach, what are your thoughts on all of this? Do you think that this is just kind of a ploy? Do you think that they'll eventually come together and get to the 16-team playoff, get to the 24-team playoff? Do you think that these two sides really hate each other that much? Do you think that are you starting to put into question your thought process of the two sides coming together in the Big Ten and the SEC, parting off into their own thing away from the NCAA? I know I just asked you a whole lot of questions there, but essentially, what are your thoughts about this entire situation, what it means for the future of college football?
Hopefully this doesn't take this conversation all the way off the rails. I think the wrong people are making decisions about college football. Like, more and more, Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, they have been great commissioners and great statesmen for their leagues. Right. And we cover the Big Ten. We love the Big Ten. They should be nowhere near the playoff, in my humble opinion. Now, ESPN should also be nowhere near the playoff. And part of the problem is
ESPN has a seat here. I think they're just controlling the deadline on when they decide. I think that's all the power that ESPN has.
But because they televise it and they like there is,
and they control all the televising. Yes, I understand.
There is some power, as much as Kirk Herbstreit, who we love, wants to say that they have no influence. Right. I've go listen to Desmond Howard laugh a little bit. Yeah, no influence. But the reality is, this is, we talked about two parents, fighting. It's more than that. It's two power brokers who neither of which are getting their way, and they're doing everything they can to assert control of the situation. And I'll be honest, I enjoyed that when the Big Ten was upsetting the SEC, because it felt like the Big Ten needed some wins. But now, like, the Big Ten has not only pulled even with the SEC, I might argue that the Big Ten has pulled ahead. This is not the time to ruin the sport. And that's part of the problem with this whole thing. And the playoff discussion is one piece of it. but they are just thinking about how they can line their pockets and their conference's pockets with more money rather than thinking about what's best for the sport. And so, do I think 16 or 24 is best for the sport? I don't care. I don't think either of these men should be making a decision that affects 135 teams or however many are in FBS now with 105 student athlete rosters. So we're talking about 150 or 15,000 student athletes that are impacted by the decisions of these two men. Like, they shouldn't be making this decision solely with their interests in mind. So that's my thought.
Well, yeah, they shouldn't be the ones making the decisions. They're in charge of their conference, and that's what they should be in charge of, and that's what they should be fighting for. I don't blame Tony Petitti or Greg Sankey here for what they're trying to do, because they're doing what their job is. Their job is to look out for their conference and put their conference in the best situation possible. Does that mean I like what either of them are doing? No, not necessarily, but I can look at this objectively and say they're doing what they are hired to do. They're not hired to be the decision makers of college football. They're hired to run their conference and set their conference up the best they possibly can in college football. And that's what they're trying to do. And that's why, you have all this drama, you have all this craziness, and you have these two essentially trying to break away from the rest of college football, in my opinion, because they recognize that the rest of college football doesn't have leadership, doesn't have anything for them. Now, the SEC is trying to say here that they would be willing to break off and just do everything on their own. Now, we've heard this before from the SEC. Bull crap. Okay, the SEC is not going anywhere. The SEC is not going to break off on their own. Will they break off with the Big Ten? Absolutely. I think they would do that. They're not going to break off on their own. It would be terrible for them. It would not work out for them, and they would come crawling back over to the rest of college football. And that's not even me being a Big Ten homer saying that. That's the truth. They do not have enough of a national presence to be able to be a viable league all on their own.
But don't you think, like, I hear what you're saying, but don't you think that them breaking off, which we've said that seems like going to be the end game, but isn't that making it in a sense making a decision for college football that would kill countless other programs that are playing in this sport?
I mean, to a certain extent, sure. I mean, it would hurt a lot of college football, but they wouldn't have the national relevance that they have now. They would just have the Southern relevance. Unless they go out and add a whole bunch of teams from across the country, you just don't have enough and you don't have enough in big cities. You have enough fan passion. You just don't have a volume of fans enough.
Well, I mean, if it's just the SEC, I agree. But if you get if the SEC and the Big Ten break away together,
and that's what I'm saying is that's what the SEC knows they have to do. They have to do that with the Big Ten if they want to. I do want to talk about the future, though. If it is 12 teams in the playoffs, and the SEC is going to 9 conference games. A lot of SEC fans not happy with Greg Sankey that he made this decision, and I get it. I'm like, why in the world did you do this? Why did you go to 9 conference games?
Because Spaghetti kept trolling them. That's why.
I don't know why you did not go to 9 conference games and not go to automatic qualifiers. To me, that was one of the stupidest decisions that Greg Sankey has done, because I do think it's going to impact how many teams they get into the playoffs. And especially coming off a year like this, the 3rd year in a row where an SEC team is not in the national championship, the shine on the SEC is not what it once was. No. And for Greg Sankey to make that decision to gamble in this type of season and say, one of our teams is going to win it all. No, they're not. Your best team, your furthest team in the college football playoffs was Ole Miss. The team that Lane Kiffin left because he said he couldn't win a national championship. I don't know if he said that, but obviously that was the indication that he didn't think he could win a national championship. That was the team that made it the furthest in the playoffs this year. Yep. And the SEC apparently is going to 9 games. Not apparently, they are going to 9 games. And I don't think it's going to go well for them. I don't think they're going to dominate. I don't think they're ever going to have 5 teams in a 12-team playoff again with them at 9 games. Sorry, it was very long-winded. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's Josh Pate on his show. He is to the point. He was already acknowledging that the top of the Big Ten was better than the top of the SEC. He conceded the middle is better in the Big Ten than it is the SEC in his latest show. And like, a lot of people accuse him of being an SEC homer, but he's saying it. And he didn't say it because of bowl season. It's like, that's been the case because of things that we've been saying, coaching.
Well, and he was the one that said that bowl season shouldn't decide that.
Right.
So he's not making that decision based off of bowl season. Credit to him.
Yeah. Yeah. So like so we're seeing like even Feinbaum has been, although he waffles as much as a politician. So maybe politics would go.
Did you see my video yesterday on him?
I did not, but I saw the headline. I was like, I need to watch that at some point.
Yeah, go watch it. I think you'll have fun with it.
Yeah. Oh boy. But yeah, like ESPN is having a hard time figuring out how to control the narrative because it's just uber clear the SEC is, I mean, it's not the conference it once was. And now you're going to go to 9 games where you're just going to beat up on each other more. Like,
well,
what are you going to do?
Yeah. And also you don't have the perception anymore. If you had the perception of we've won the last 2 or 3 national championships, sure, do that. You could get a 3-loss SEC team in over a 1-loss Big 12 team. If that happens, I mean, you did technically get that a little bit with like BYU and Alabama type of deal, but BYU was technically a 2-loss team after that Texas Tech game. But still, like, you're not going to get that type of benefit of the doubt anymore. You would have in the past if you had gone to this then. And I understand what everybody's saying about like the Big Ten told them they were going to do it. The Big Ten has been telling them to do this for a long time, and they never did it. Oh. And if the SEC wants to say, well, screw you, we're going off and doing our own thing, why are they saying that now and not saying it back then when it was, well, we're not going to 9 conference games? You know what I'm saying? Like, it just, the decision making here from Greg Sankey doesn't make any sense. And I think the Big Ten is going to benefit from this, and I think that the rest of college football is going to benefit from it. I think we'll probably get 2 Big 12 teams in the playoffs next year. I think we'll probably get 2 or 3 ACC teams in the playoffs next year. If Miami wins it all, I think you got a great chance of getting multiple ACC teams in the playoff. I mean, we'll have to see what happens with the polls and stuff like that to really get a gauge on what people are thinking. But as far as I'm concerned, there shouldn't be any more than 2, maybe 3 SEC teams in the top 10 next season.
Yeah. I think we will see more parity across conferences. I agree with you. Notre Dame's going to get in next year. And I mean, part of that's the work they're doing.
Well, they just have to be top 12. Yeah. That's like their conference championship.
Yeah.
Hey, Philip's here. I didn't see Philip come in. He says, let's get the likes up, guys. Thanks, Philip. Yeah. Get the likes up, everybody.
By the way, there's a banger happening on NBC right now. It's overtime Chicago. I think the Big Ten Chicago Bears, because you look at all the Big Ten players on that team, taking on the Rams. Yeah,
the most Big Ten guy I've ever met, right?
Yes. Oh boy.
Just screams.
Kyle Monangai, though.
Caleb Williams. Sorry.
Kyle Monangai's had some big plays in this game.
Oh, yeah, Rutgers, man, we called him being good in the NFL when we did our draft stuff.
Freaking. Let's draft him in the 7th round. Let's let him fall. What are you people doing? What were you doing? Good job, Ben Johnson. Way to believe in a Rutgers.
Anyway, all right, get back to it. Final thoughts. Final thoughts on the 9-game SEC schedule and how it'll impact the 12-team playoffs next year.
I think. Well, I think especially because there's just not a lot of buzz going into preseason. Well, at least not now. Now, who knows what SEC honks will do in summer and in August. But right now, the past couple of years, even people have been talking up the SEC. Not this year. Like, people are looking and saying, oh, the SEC's in trouble. And then if you look at the transfer portal, the SEC's in trouble. Like Alabama got pillaged, right? Georgia has got not pillaged, but they have lost a lot of players. LSU's getting some guys, but does anybody trust Lane Kiffin?
I don't know. I tweeted that the other day. I was like, if you're the SEC and your best hope is Lane Kiffin, like, you've already conceded.
Yeah, it's not good.
No,
it's not great. So, and then you got to play 9-game schedules. And a lot of these teams probably aren't going to have games that prove themselves. They're going to have the problem that I think the Big Ten in some ways had the past couple of years, which there weren't a lot of big non-conference games that kind of established themselves. And so you just kind of had to trust that they were good. Like that was Oregon's problem this year, right? Like everybody was a little skeptical of Oregon because they didn't play anybody. They tried to, right? They scheduled Oregon State, they scheduled Oklahoma State, but they stunk. And so they just had to rely on a Big Ten schedule. And so people are like, are they good? Or are they not? Guess what? They were pretty good. But SEC is going to have the same issue. And I don't think they're as good.
Well, yeah, and they've shown they're not as good. Even, you want to talk about how Oregon maybe didn't look the best in the playoffs. They still beat Texas Tech 22-0. Like that was the best team in the Big 12 in a long time. And, the second or third place team in the Big 10, whatever you want to categorize them as, they shut them out, beat them 22-0. So yeah. It's gonna be really interesting. I personally think the SEC is not going to get the shine they've gotten in years past. I don't think we'll hear anything about 7 teams making the playoffs from Greg Sankey